Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Today, the topic that I'm going to share with you is about bacterial food illnesses. There are two terms. One is bacterial infection and the other is food intoxication. The both words differ from one another, which we confuse with one another. Bacterial infection means that the bacteria itself, which is present in the food consumed by the consumer, settles down in the intestine and causes infection. While on the other hand, food intoxication means that the bacteria which was present in the food produced its secondary metabolites or produced some toxins which affected the food, caused food poisoning, and when consumed by the consumer, then it upsets their stomach. Certain bacteria that causes bacterial illnesses are Salmonella, Campylobacter, E. coli, and Listeria. While some of the other bacteria which produces their toxins in food and causes food intoxication, these may include Staphylococcus aureus and Clostridium botulinum. Now, there are certain factors that affect bacterial growth. Those factors include the pH, temperature, moisture, and nutrient content. The pH, nutrient pH basically affects or is the optimum temperature for the bacterial growth. Similarly, the temperature, room temperature, provides the optimal growth for bacterial growth. Moisture enhances bacterial growth, and the nutrient content is also very essential for the growth of bacteria. So if we change the pH, if we increase it or we decrease it, it may inhibit the growth of bacteria. Similarly, if we increase or decrease the temperature of food, for example, we have refrigerators, we have temperature around 6, 7, 5, or in freezer, we have temperatures below 0 degree. So they inhibit the growth of bacteria. Similarly, if we increase the temperature, for example, if we are boiling a water, it's above 100 degrees, so that kills the bacteria. Moisture, the more moisture content in a food, the more bacterial growth might grow in the food. But the more dry or the more we reduce the moisture content from the food, the minimum growth of bacteria becomes in that particular food. For example, when we dry the meat and we after drying it, we preserve it by drying. So because of the minimum moisture content in that particular meat, there is least chances of bacterial growth. And the nutrient content is also very essential for the growth of bacteria, because as we all know, nutrients are the essential for growth, for human growth, for any other creature growth. So if they have a good amount of nutrients, they will grow. Even the minute amount of nutrients, they will grow. So to control bacterial growth from the food, we can change all these contents, or we can change the pH, we can change the temperature, we can reduce the moisture, and we can cut down the nutrient content. So in that way, we can reduce the growth of bacteria. Okay, now let's discuss a few of the bacteria one by one, starting with Salmonella. Salmonella is the bacteria, and the bacterial illness that it causes is salmonellosis. It has more than 2,300 stereotypes which causes bacterial illnesses. It mainly grows in the intestine of the human or the animals as well, and its severity of illness depends on the size of the dose, resistance of the host, and the specific strain of Salmonella that causes illness. The temperatures on which Salmonella bacteria grows is between 41 and 113 degrees Fahrenheit. They are readily destroyed by cooking at 160 Fahrenheit. And if they are refrigerated or if they are freezed, then they will not grow. But once they are again exposed to the room temperature, they might grow again. The symptoms of salmonellosis are headache, diarrhea, abdominal pain, nausea, chills, fever, and vomiting. The effect of salmonellosis starts to occur within the 8 to 72 hours after eating of the contaminated food, and it lasts for 4 to 7 days. If it lasts more than 3 weeks, then it may cause arthritis, and it affects mostly to the infants, young children, pregnant women, elderly people, and people who are diseased or have low immunity. Their main food sources include meat and meat-based foods, plus egg and egg-based foods. These are the basic main sources of spreading salmonella. Now there is Campylobacteriosis. Campylobacteriosis is caused by Campylobacter. That mainly is present in the contaminated food and the contaminated water. The effect that is caused by Campylobacter is diarrhea, nausea, abdominal cramps, muscle pain, headache, fever, and some common other symptoms. Its onset occurs within 2 to 10 days of consuming that bacteria through food, and it lasts for 2 to 7 days. And if it lasts more than that, it may cause some serious complications like urinary tract infections, recurrent colitis, acute cholecystosis, and if not treated, then it may also cause death. But the rate of death from Campylobacteriosis is very rare. That Campylobacter bacteria grows best in the reduced oxygen environment. So it's easily killed at 120 Fahrenheit. It's inhibited by acidic environment or salts or drying conditions, and it may not multiply at the temperature below 85 Fahrenheit. After Campylobacteriosis, there comes Listeriosis. Listeriosis is another disease that is caused by Listeria monocytogenes that was primarily affected in the veterinary concern. So yeah, after the veterinary concern, it was also seen that the humans are also being affected by the Listeria. The common symptoms that were observed in the animal were spontaneous abortions and encephalopathy, plus epileptic seizures. In humans, few more additional symptoms were seen, which included fever, headaches, flu-like symptoms. Listeria monocytogenes are frequently carried by humans and animals both. The organism can grow in the pH range of 4.5 to 9.6. So it has quite a large range of pH in which it can grow. It is salt tolerant and relatively resistant to drying, but it is easily destroyed by heat. Between the temperatures of 35 Fahrenheit to 113 Fahrenheit. Listeriosis is primarily affected newborn infants, pregnant women, the elderly, and those with compromised immune systems. In a healthy non-pregnant person, listeriosis may occur as a mild illness with fever, headaches, nausea, and vomiting. Among pregnant women, intrauterine or cervical infections may result in spontaneous abortions and stillbirths. Infant born alive may develop meningitis. So the incubation period is a few days to several weeks. In 2011, a large outbreak of listeriosis was caused by cantaloupe contaminated during processing of, at a one facility. So, staphylococcal intoxication. Staphylococcal intoxication is caused by bacterial intoxication. Basically, these are caused by the secondary metabolites of bacteria, which bacteria produces in the food, and when consumed, then they affect the or they spoil the food and they cause the intoxication. So Staphylococcus bacteria is mainly found on the nose, throat of the people, especially the people who have sinus infection. Plus, it's also present in the wounds, pimples, boils, acne. So particularly, Staphylococcus is also spread through untreated water, raw milk, and it multiplies in the warm food, and it produces its toxin in the food, which causes the illness. The toxin is not detectable by taste or smell. It can be killed at the temperatures of 120 Fahrenheit. It is heat resistant, and therefore it's important for the staph organism from. It's important to stop staph organism from further growing. So, food commonly involved in the staphylococcal intoxication include protein food such as processed meats, tuna, fish, chicken sandwich fillings, cream fillings, meat salads, etc. The symptoms include abdominal cramps, vomiting, severe diarrhea, and exhaustion. Its symptoms starts to appear between 1 to 8 hours after the consumption, and the effect lasts between 1 to 2 days. The food that is being eaten should be either kept hot or kept cold. So the room temperature basically becomes the ideal condition for the bacterial intoxication. And particularly the leftovers. The leftovers should be freezed quickly, or they should be heated properly before consuming. Clostridium botulinum is another bacteria which spreads through the soil, non-potable water, unprocessed foods, and they also are contaminated with the intestinal tract of animals and humans. The prevention from foodborne illnesses include purchasing and storage of the food. While we are purchasing the food, we have to store it quickly so that we may not give much time for the bacteria to grow in the food or to produce its metabolites. For example, when we buy the milk, we go home and we boil it as soon as possible so that the bacteria inside the milk dies and does not produce more bacteria in the food or does not cause any bacterial illness or food intoxication. Similarly, those foods, for example, we are purchasing the meat products from the market, we have to clean them and freeze them as soon as possible so that to minimize the effect of bacterial growth and bacterial intoxication. The second step for preventing foodborne illnesses are preparation. While preparing the food, we have to uh, take care of hygiene practice the most. For example, if we are touching any raw meat, we have to separate our fruits and vegetables and other food from that particular area so that no contamination from the raw meat may get into the other food. And we have to wash our hands very properly, especially after coming out of the washroom, because few people don't practice washing their hands properly while using the washroom, which becomes one of the cause for contamination of bacteria, as bacteria is residing inside the intestine, and it is going to affect the if your hands are not clean, then it's going to affect or contaminate every other thing that you are going to touch with those hands. So hygiene practices are very essential, especially at the part of preparing the food. clean your hands properly, wash them, wash the slabs and the working area properly, so that you may work in a clean environment. Then comes serving. We have to serve the hot food hot and cold food cold, because if we are going to serve them at the room temperatures, what will happen that the bacteria might get chance to grow. If you have freeze the food and you are going to prepare it, so that freezing temperature and the hot temperature, they both are the temperatures where food bacteria is limited or it's inactive, it's not working. But when it's get the time in between, which is the room temperature, then it may start to grow again, and it may affect your food, and it may either affect the consumer and either affect the food by spoiling the food, by producing its secondary metabolites. And eventually the handling of leftovers are also very important, because sometimes we don't um, consider the leftovers as uh, warming them very properly or freezing them out. We just cover the food and place it in the slab and keep on eating it time to time, so that leftover might be the medium for the bacterial growth. So we have to keep even the leftovers in the fridge or freezers, or we have to heat them properly before eating, so that we may minimize the effect of bacteria in the food. So these are the certain bacteria that we have discussed, and their effects, their um, temperatures particularly on which they are destroyed. I hope that you understand that how we can prevent foodborne illnesses, and you understand the difference between bacterial infections and bacterial intoxications. We'll hope to see you next time soon, and take care. Allah Hafiz.